Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to the Temple of Kriya Yoga. My talk today is Astrology and Kriya Yoga, Planetary Patterns for 2019. Doesn't 2019 sound like the future? We are totally moving quickly into the future. Kriyananda said, "It's not how you predict the future. It's how you balance the future." I'm going to try and put that together for you a little bit and then talk about 3 important planetary patterns for 2019. First of all, Kriya Yoga is a yoga of wise and compassionate action. And one of the ways wisdom can be gained is through astrology. With astrology, you can analyze your karmic patterns for this lifetime, which is very important. But also important is to predict the patterns coming up in the future, which is basically what we're going to talk about today. But once you have that information, what do you do with it? For example, there are a lot of people who get information like the kind you can get from astrology or maybe even from other types of predictions, whether it's economic prediction, weather prediction, whatever. And to me, it's a lot like somebody standing in the middle of the railroad tracks. And at first, you can just feel the vibration of the train coming in the tracks before you even see it. And you go like, yeah, I'm right, the train is coming. And then you can see the train coming far down the track. You go like, yep, I was right. Or you can say, oh, my astrologer was right. I can see that aspect coming down the tracks. And if you were watching that person, you would say to them, what would you say to them? Get off the railroad tracks. The train is coming. But there's so many people who watch it coming, and you're going, if only, they only have to move. You only have to move like this much, 2 steps in your life different from what you're doing right now. And the train will go like this, whoosh, and you'll feel the wind of it, but it'll pass you by. That's why it's important not just to be able to predict the future, but also to be able to balance the future. And in Kriya Yoga, we call that softening your karma. So when you get information, extra information, whether it's from astrology or other means, take everything you've learned from the classes you've learned, the lectures on yoga and meditation, your life experience, and then wisely, and we say with skillful means, use that information to balance the future. Basically, you're just trying to make things better than they would be if you didn't have that little extra piece of information. Let's talk about the major aspects of 2019 that will affect everyone in a general way, regardless of what's in your natal horoscope or your birth chart. The most important one, and some of you who've studied astrology or read about astrology in magazines or online have probably already know that both the planet Saturn and the planet Pluto are in the sign of Capricorn right now. And they're heading for a conjunction. They're heading to be in the same space at the same time. Not really. You know that Saturn's out here and Pluto's way out there. But in longitude, they'll be together as we see it from Earth. And they are heading for that conjunction in the year 2020. But like I said, it's like we're moving into the future really fast. 2020 is not that far away. And what's happening is, over the course of the years, Saturn's going to get really close to Pluto, and then it's going to move back again. And then in January of 2020, it'll actually make that conjunction. But when they're there and they're both so close as they are now, they're affecting one another. The symbol for Saturn is the immovable object, and the symbol for Pluto is something striving to change, the irresistible force. You've got the immovable object and the irresistible force, and what happens when they get together? Something happens. So I call the aspect the volcano aspect, because a volcano is this churning of lava, hot lava underneath the earth. And for a lot of volcanoes that aren't active at the moment, they have some layer of earth on top of them. That's the Saturn. There's some pressure. There's pressure from within trying to escape. There's pressure from without trying to hold that pressure in. And there's some point, unfortunately, where something explodes. And then they have a volcano, and the volcano doesn't just affect that mountain, but that volcano affects things for miles and miles and miles, hundreds of miles away. So this is the type of aspect that I can't tell you can avoid, but I can tell you can, we call it like remediate or mitigate, if you want to say it that way. A Saturn-Pluto conjunction is not a surprise aspect. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it's a frustration aspect. Let's just keep it in very simple terms. And so you need to think about now, before the aspect, what are the frustrations in your life? And let's take a minute. We're going to close our eyes just because I want you to really think about this for a moment. Take a moment to think about the person or group of people, if there's a group, that are the most frustrating to you in your life right now. And if you have any, I know that most people do. And then I'd like you to think about, well, we still have our eyes closed and have a moment of contemplation, to think about what is the most frustrating situation in your life. It might not be people, it might be some sort of life situation. Just see if you can identify that. And you can open your eyes, but I want you to keep it in your memory, because this situation will be your clue or touch point for the Saturn-Pluto aspect. So basically what I'm saying is, in the next year, those frustrating situations are not necessarily going to get better. Why is that helpful information? It's helpful information because there's things that you can do to handle them. First of all, to take time in your, after your meditation or during your time of contemplation or reflection or journaling or whatever you do in the course of your day to think your thoughts. Think about, how would you like to handle that situation? What's the best case scenario for this situation? Can you send, I love what Janice said earlier about the compassion with bias and without bias. Can you take that person who frustrates you the most, and can you send them some compassion every day? Even if it's just a little tiny grain of compassion. Sometimes that's all you can do. I heard somebody say that they couldn't do it. And then I said, well, just thank them for breathing out, because every time they breathe out, they feed the plants. Just, there's got to be something. And like Tom was expressing in the Jacob Marley and the Scrooge story, you have these people who are so difficult, who've been so Scroogey, as we say, so miserly, so terrible to other people in their life. Is it possible? Could there be that kind of miracle where somebody could become good, as we say? That somebody could improve, they could change? If people can change, then imagine that change. Imagine that change. Imagine what you want. And bless the people and send compassion to those people. Send compassion to that situation. Imagine it resolved in a harmonious way instead of an explosive way. If you can do this, you will begin to solve, you'll begin to let off the steam, because it's a volcano, right? And sometimes if the volcano has all these steam vents, and if they can let off enough steam, the volcano won't explode. So you want to avoid an explosion. I'm going to tell you a couple of important dates for this aspect. The first one is coming up right on January 5th. So you've got a few weeks. Get going with those blessings. Get going with your imagination. How can you resolve this in the most harmonious way? There's an eclipse on January 5th, and that is right in the middle of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So tensions will be high. How can you be that person whose tensions aren't high? And basically through it, we talk about it here through meditation, through contemplation, through the practice of hatha yoga that can help you release tensions. Running around outside, take a walk, do something to release that tension and to practice it so that you're good at it by the time you get to that aspect. So if you're in astrology, you would have studied this. You'd known this was coming years ago, which is the whole point that Kriyananda used to talk about. You know it's happening 5-10 years down the road, and you start working on it then. But it's not too late. As the Scrooge story, the Christmas Carol says, it's never too late to start making that change in yourself. You're not trying to change other people. You're only trying to change what's within you. So think about January 5th with a week on either side, and think about the last 2 weeks in April when the Saturn and Pluto both change direction. And there's some other dates throughout the year, but if you learn through those, you won't need astrology to tell you. You'll see it. You'll go like, oh, I'm in that frustrating situation again. Oh, I'm in that frustrating situation again. What's my technique? And you'll know it. So that's really important. Now the planet Neptune right now is in the middle of Pisces, and Jupiter is at some point going to be in the middle of Sagittarius. So let me break that down for you. Neptune's halfway through the sign of Pisces. It's going to be in Pisces until 2026, so there's a long time for that. And Neptune in Pisces is a period of time where the boundaries between the earth plane and the higher planes are permeable. Excellent time for meditation and attunement to the divine. Now Jupiter's faster moving. Jupiter moves through one sign per year, and it just in November it went out of Scorpio into Sagittarius, which is the home sign for Jupiter. And so Jupiter is in a happy place in Sagittarius. And Jupiter in Sagittarius is really good for learning new things. So if you're learning new things, if you're learning a new language, if you're learning cooking, if you're learning, whatever you're learning, philosophy, law, anything to be a professor, all these things are very good. Religion, foreign languages. And in yoga we'd say the Dharma. It's a good year for learning about the Dharma, the underlying laws of life. So from now until a year from now, it's really good for that. But there's a couple points where Jupiter is going to be squaring Neptune, and a square aspect is a conflict aspect. And basically it's like you're driving down the street and you're coming to an intersection, and there's another car that's driving down the 90-degree angle street, and it's coming towards that intersection. And if you both come to the intersection at the same time, something is going to happen. So it's the conflict aspect. And how is Jupiter in conflict to Neptune? They're both similar. They both have to do with religion and spirituality. But when Jupiter's in square to Neptune, there's a conflict between book learning and beliefs. Does that make sense? There's things that you learn in books, and there's also things that you learn from your own meditation. So maybe think about it that way. So the trick or the remediation for this aspect is to take time every day to think about things, to think a little bit, to study spirituality, to study your, what do they call it, scripture, to study those type of things, and then also take time for your meditation, and take time to make a connection, a positive connection between what you're studying and what's happening in your meditation, and to see because in Kriya Yoga, for us, it's all about our personal connection to the divine. See what is leading you towards that. Books and gurus and teachers can be very, very important. But your own meditation is also very, very important. And I will say one other thing about this aspect. Just because somebody's sitting in this chair, or just because something is published in a book, doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you. It's really, really important for you to contemplate and reflect and find out what's true for you. So the times when it'll be the most intense will be January 12th, so that's the middle of January, and the last 2 weeks in June. There'll be a couple other dates. One in August and September, there'll be this Jupiter-Neptune. And if it's Neptune is nebulous, it's harder to get a handle on it. But if you find yourself in conflict with something in authority is saying versus what you believe, that's your clue to this aspect, and take some time to think about it and think about what's happening with that. Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is the planet Uranus, which is right now is backed up into the last part of Aries, but for most of 2019 is going to be in Taurus. And Taurus, Uranus is electricity. And so when there's a Uranus aspect, often we feel sort of hyper, we feel energized, but it's chaotic, it's crazy, it's unexpected things happening. And when it's in Taurus, the chaos comes to the symbol of Taurus, which is stability. So you may find throughout the year and throughout the next 7 years, because Uranus is in Taurus for 7 years, that things that have to do with your stuff. Let's talk about most of our stability comes from our stuff, from our real estate, from our possessions, from things always staying the same and the same patterns. And Uranus is going to come into that, and it's going to change your relationship to your stuff. A good example could be just our phones. The phones that are now like these little computers in our pocket. They're amazing inventions. But 7 years ago, they weren't as ubiquitous as they are today with everybody like this. What's going to happen? It might not be that technology. It might be another technology where our lives, before we even notice it, are changed. But for some people, it may be, I think of Uranus as like a storm sometimes. And I think for some people, it'll be like in The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy's house got picked up in the cyclone and the tornado and taken to an entirely different land. So the mitigation for this, or there may not be a solution, but the yoga of this is detachment to stuff, to our things. What could possibly be taken away, and you are still you. The core of yourself is still you. It's just something to think about. The dates for the strongest Uranus aspects are January 6th, right by that eclipse, and then August 12th, when it goes retrograde. So that's just, as yogis, think about how do you calm yourself when things are chaotic and hyper, and that will be also very helpful to you. I want to repeat in conclusion that, remember, it's not how you predict the future. It's not knowing that information. It's how you balance the future. Take each scenario, whether it's the volcano or the belief versus book learning or the changes in our material possessions, but take time to contemplate, meditate, and balance your emotions. It's also important to be compassionate with yourself and others. Despite the fact that we have all this extra information about the future, despite that we've attained some peace and shanti, some peacefulness, some detachment, we're not living in the realm of perfection. We're people. Other people around us are just people. You have to give yourself a break. When we get thrown off balance, we rebalance. And this rebalancing, that's what our spiritual practice is. When we're really, really good rebalancers, we can be like the tightrope walkers that are so good at their balance that they can walk between two skyscrapers and not fall down. So balance and rebalance, balance and rebalance.